Okay, so welcome all. Can you see the share?
We can.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and dig in. So feel free to add yourself to the attendees list. Effectively, now I suppose I will do the welcome and not pretty for intros. If you're new to the community or you've been here 2 or fewer times, please feel free to step forward and introduce yourself. Looking at the list, do we have anyone here who hasn't been here before? I don't think so. Does anyone else see someone that they, or does anyone want to speak up and introduce themselves? I guess is the question. All right, excellent. Then next up is the outreach to language and build tool communities. We have a handy spreadsheet for tracking all of that. If new communities occur to you that you have not actually, that we don't have listed here, feel free to add them. If there are communities you can reach out and contact, feel free to add yourself as the GitBOM contact. If the person you're contacting is comfortable being listed, in other words, they consent to being listed as community contact, feel free to do that as well. Anything else on this that folks feel we should add that we don't currently have?
When I came in, there was some talk of open JDK. Do we have someone exploring that at this point?
I don't think so. If you want to reach out, you're more than welcome.
Yeah. Okay. I'll put my name down on there.
Perfect.
Or you can.
Actually, we've got a meeting with the Microsoft Open JDK team on Friday. If you want to just send me your email address, I will add you to the invite.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I can do that.
Cool.
Awesome.
And not to say that this is the exclusive thing that we're doing, but anyway.
Yeah, I do have some contacts at Oracle, but let's start with our Microsoft friends.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, cool. All right, anything else here? All right then. So moving down a little further, we do have some event announcements. So Ava and I will be giving a talk at Supply Chain Security Con coming up at Open Source Summit on next Tuesday at 4:05 Central Time. There's a link to that talk here. Someone had added Open SSF Day. Do we have a talk at Open SSF Day that I was unaware of?
We don't. I just wanted to remind folks of that event. There's going to be a bunch of related talks, nothing GitBOM specific there, but things that touch on the space.
Awesome. And I think that it's good to have a placeholder for CFP reminders as well. I
ninja'd that in at the last moment to ask, are there open CFPs right now that folks either have submitted to, we can help raise awareness of, or think that someone from this community should submit a talk to, just to help, raise visibility?
There's a whole bunch of co-located events for KubeCon North America that I expect to have CFPs opening up any moment now, if they have not just opened up.
Including a cloud native security event, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And then I think I recall vaguely, Mel, that you had a talk at Open Source Summit Dublin or something of that nature.
I've submitted a proposal to Open Source Summit Dublin.
Okay.
I have not heard back on it yet.
Okay, excellent. So probably good to start pulling this together. The other thing we may want to consider, and it may be a little late to do this for the OSS stack of things, something I've done occasionally with other communities in the past is when you're not quite to the point of holding your own events, and many communities never get to that point, is holding a happy hour where you sort of say, okay, people interested in this is the bar we're meeting up at.
Yeah. An unofficial happy hour or an official BOF, Birds of a Feather session at an event. And we could certainly propose to put a BOF on the schedule at any one of these.
That is probably also a good idea. Cool. Anything else that folks want to work in terms of events?
So just on the, if you wind up doing a BOF or something, if you need a few dollars for, drinks or whatever, ping me. I can't make promises, but I can at least, knock on some doors at Sneak.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. You're going to try and sneak in some beer?
Watch out for the sneak Rottweiler.
Bharati is planning to submit a paper for the LLVM conference on her GitBOM work.
Excellent.
Very cool.
Yeah, not sure.
That is a good place for
I think
it.
it's on July. I think. Yeah, we need to confirm. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Anything else on events? Okay, we had a semi-open item from last time on the time of the call. So DPP had made a very good point about this being a sort of an aggressively unfriendly time for Europe and Israel. And asking whether or not moving back to 9 a.m. Pacific time on Tuesdays would work for this community. And I think when we raised it last week, everyone who was in attendance on the call was okay with it. And we wanted to sort of give time for folks to call this out to others, give time for another round of people to come around and sort of see how that went. Is everyone on the call still okay with it? And has anyone reached out to someone who's not okay with it?
I am okay, but some Tuesdays we have some meetings on next meetings within Cisco. I might not be able to attend, so I have a conflict.
Okay.
Sometimes I have a conflict.
Okay, that's good to know. And that does sadly happen sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? So do we feel comfortable enough consensus-wise to look at then moving the meeting to 9 a.m. Pacific time? And when would we want to start moving the meeting to 9 a.m. Pacific time? DPP has to stand up.
So can I suggest that we put out a tweet about it and also put it out on the Slack channel, just for some final feedback, and then maybe we'll decide, make a final decision if there's no objections or no, beyond the occasional conflict with internal Cisco meetings or whatever. If there's no material objection, then we'll take it up next week to figure out when we move the time. Does that sound like a good plan? That way we're like giving notice to everybody.
That sounds good. It also means that we've basically also had 3 weeks of discussion on it, which takes care of the vacation problem. I always feel a little bit bad about making decisions too quickly, lest someone be on vacation.
Yeah. And Ed, can you follow up with Jeff Shute to see whether he's it's okay with him? He has not been here for the last 2 weeks. Cool.
I'll check in with Jeff. I'll also check in with Rafi, who's not been here the last couple of weeks.
Okay, perfect. Is there anybody on the call who can think of anybody else who we might want to consult out of band?
Okay then. So it sounds like we have a plan. Excellent. So we can move on to POCs. And so feel free, POC folks, to add yourself to the agenda if you have things. And we currently have gitbom-rs up on the POC list. Do you want me to relinquish the share?
Sure.
To you now?
Yeah, sounds good. And looks like participant screen sharing is disabled at the moment.
Joy, let me see if I can figure out how to fix that.
Zoom.
Zoom. Let me stop sharing first because then they get a better choice of menus.
Why do I have this like just incredible urge to say 02904. No, that's not. No, 02134. That was it. 02134.
Does anyone actually know how participant sharing is enabled?
It should.
Yes. Security, if you are the host, you go to the security tab or button on the bottom, click that, and then click enable.
There we go. Thank you. Done.
All right, cool. Let me share my screen. So what I'm about to demo is some enhancements I've made to the gitbom-rs CLI, which uses the also in progress gitbom-rs implementation of the gitbom protocol in Rust. So let's go ahead and take a look. Let me go to my terminal. So I've already compiled the gitbom-rs CLI. And let me just make sure I cleared what I wanted to. I did. That's good. So I have the binary in target debug gitbom CLI. So calling the binary here, passing in the argument artifact tree, which means I'm going to be making a bill of or a gitbom file and gitoids for, oh, there's another cat, gitoids for more than one file. And let's go ahead and make it for my tests directory. So I do this pretty quickly. It generates gitoids for each of those. And the new functionality is we now create the gitbom file and generate a gitoid for it. So if I look in .bom/objects, I see I've got, sharded files with all my gitoids. Let's take a look at the gitbom file, and let's just do cat.bom/objects/d23/ whatever's there. And right now it added in gitoids for all 4 of the files that are within tests, including in fixtures.
So are we using underscore or space there on the after blob?
I wasn't sure. It's a pretty easy fix. It can be either.
Okay. So the show points to, it's always fun discovering the ambiguities and interpretation of documentation of things.
There was a little line in the spec, so I wasn't sure what it represented.
That had been intended to be a space. And
Okay,
cool. Actually a character. There's a character that represents the space,
gotcha.
white space character as a visualizable character.
Cool.
And that's the little thing. It's got little.
Okay.
But I completely understand how that could be misinterpreted as an underscore.
Yeah. Yep. No worries. In fact, I can just fix that right now. So source main. Bomb. Go down here. Looks for blob. All right, blob. Let's change this to being a space. And let's compile this. Cargo build.
Yep. If anyone has strong opinions on the delimiter there, it's obviously a conversation we can have. But I think that clearly we should all agree on a delimiter.
All right. Let's do it again. And now let's look at the new gitbom file or appended. We'll look at this one. So let's do code.bom/target, or not target /objects/d2.
Shouldn't the OID of the BOM have changed?
Yeah, so there might be a bug in the code.
Oh, shouldn't have changed?
Well, if it's got different content. It didn't update the thing.
No,
You didn't delete the old files.
I did not.
You may have built a new one, but.
So let's remove .bom. Let's do this again. Sudo. All right. Okay.
Looks like it's still producing this.
Yeah, so that might be a bug within the code itself. So go ahead, DPP.
So 2 things. One is freaking awesome. Actually, 3 things. The second one is, do we want to put the URIs rather than something different in the gitbom file itself? So, if we're going to have a consistency around like referring to things, if we just use the URI for consistency, would that what are like people's thoughts on that?
URI.
Are we going back to the discussion about how to distinguish between SHA-1 Gitoid versus SHA-256 Gitoid BOM files, or am I misunderstanding?
This doesn't go there. This is just a generic look. If we're going to refer to something, if we're going to have a reference to something, maybe we should have a canonical way of referring. So in this case, it's blob space hash, but we have substantially the same information in the URI, although the URI is a bit richer. But if you wanted to feed something into a tool, if there's just like a single kind of canonical way of representing the reference, it strikes me that we should use that canonical way. And I also realized, yeah, go ahead.
Clarifying question. You've said the URI multiple times, but I don't know what you mean by the URI in this context.
So it's what Gitoid : blob or file :
Got it. Thank you.
mechanism : hash.
Yep. The Gitoid
Yeah. So the thing that we're registering with IANA, the thing that the SPDX document will refer to. I mean, if we just have that as a canonical way of referencing other thingies, that strikes me as a win. I also realize that it's going to be different than the way that we reference, or than the Git standard itself for how the Git files rather than the Git blobs are mentioned.
So are you talking about in terms of like how they get stored in the file system?
No, I'm talking about, you see the line number 1 here?
Yeah. No,
So-
I understand, but that was one of the options that was talked about for distinguishing different kinds of GitBOM files. Different, between different sorts of things. Like one option was the file header option. One option was we used the URI as the URI prefix every time we got the object. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So
Okay.
this gets back to the file thingy. Yeah. So yeah, I'm still biasing towards URIs everywhere.
No, and that's a perfectly fine position to have. I just wanted to make sure that you weren't getting to something subtle that I was missing when I was referencing it in my brain back to that conversation.
What I did was I failed to reference back to the file format discussion that we had last call. I'm sorry for doing that and throwing mud in the water or sand in the air. Whatever.
It's a perfectly valid point of discussion.
Yeah. The other point that I wanted to raise now is it'd be really interesting to see whether, and maybe I should take responsibility for this, do an extern C with some of the entry points in the Rust library and see whether we can write the same code in Python.
Oh, cool.
So in other words, look, I'm sorry, I'm just being a little evil here, but if we can use the Rust library for multiple languages, it strikes me that starts moving the code base into look here for some of the core implementations.
I say go for that. That would be awesome.
Okay. Yeah, I shouldn't have opened my mouth.
It's okay. I'm happy to work with you on it. Yeah.
Okay.
If you'd like Rust FFI help, I'm happy to contribute as well.
Yay.
Cool. Well, I'll try to get it done this week and get a pull request up. And Andrew and Nell, if you can just do your looking at stuff with multiple eyes thing, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
Sounds
And
good.
if questions or stuff come up, I'd say just put them in the Slack and we can talk about them async too. All right. That's it for my demo. It's been fun.
Okay, fantastic.
Who's Mr. Doctor?
Oh, Marcos.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. Oh, I just saw that your name now. Okay, cool.
Yeah, need to rename that. Sorry.
It's all good.
Okay, cool. Let me go ahead and share the agenda again.
I have a sort of general question about these proof of concept things. Do we have anyone with an example of like actually using GitBOM in an end-to-end way, like to evaluate some real plausible policy, like a sort of example, an end-to-end example, like a small end-to-end example of all of these tools fitting together and actually doing something with it.
Yonkwai's work with BOM-sh provided a little bit of that. It was a good sort of appetizer of building a kernel, instrumenting it with GitBOM, separately building a list of CVEs correlated to origin files, and then being able to cross-reference those two data sets meaningfully. Not, the full end-to-end I'd love to see, which is incorporate GitBOM at multiple build steps across a couple languages. Build something in C or Rust, and then build it in the next language, and then put it in a Docker container, and then have an admission control policy in your cloud native, system that can verify it at the time of container launch. I'd love to see that kind of a more complex story told, but I don't know that anyone's gotten there yet.
Okay, thanks.
If you're putting your hand up and want to build that, I'm happy to help folks rally around you doing that.
And I know that we're kicking around some things in the C ecosystem, because it happens to be one where we have a lot of needs about, sort of closing the gap with some of the tools to be able to do something that's meaningful to us in terms of embedded builds, but we're not quite there yet.
My point I'm getting at is that a lot of these discussions we have a tendency to disappear into abstractions because there's not a specific concrete problem that we're trying to solve. And I think it really helps focus conversations to have a handful of really concrete use cases that we know must be supported for the project to be viable as a whole.
So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'd finished.
Yeah. I would love to take some of what's in my head, certainly, and I know some of us, many of us have use cases in mind, and anchor our work in maybe 2 or 3 use cases that we work towards. The top of my mind one, especially after the last 2 weeks, is providing significant additional signal to a blue team or defending team as they're looking at incoming packages.
Yeah, that is a thing that's particularly of concern to me as well.
Yeah, I mean, so like, one of the other questions that comes to me, I know we've got, in terms of the LLVM client, the LLD build tools, we've got some work there. I've started poking around a little bit in the internals of the Go compiler on my side in terms of how we would go about some of that, although not to the point of actually having anything to show yet. Is anyone looking at the actual sort of fundamental build tools for other languages that we might go and build things into?
I've talked with some people in the Rust community about potentially, I mean, it would be not easy, but we could do an experiment with it potentially very quickly. Getting it actually incorporated in the Rust compiler might take a little more time because that has to go through the RFC. Ava, over to you.
And instead of focusing on where we want it long-term, which is in the build tools, in the linkers, to Jeremy's point of demonstrating value to convince them all that the work is worth doing, what if we took the Rust CLI and or BOM-sh, do a proof of concept integration within Toto, and with that we can start demonstrating the consumption side, right?
I feel like Santiago should be here.
Yeah.
No, I get that, and I actually like integration work within Toto. I mean, I guess the other point is, to sort of Nell's point about upstreaming things, is always going to be a more involved process than getting a proof of concept going. But one of the things that can often aid the upstreaming process is if the people sitting upstream can see how easy a thing is. Because people's brains will often go to increased complexity, and just a whole host of potential objections disappear when you have a working proof of concept. Because someone can say, well, but that'll slow down the build. Okay, well, we have a differential comparison of the build speeds between with and without. And it looks like it's going to cost, mumble nanoseconds per file. Anyone here concerned about mumble nanoseconds per file? Probably not. For example, people getting concerned about artifact bloat. People vary in their abstractness and concreteness. I tend to be overly abstract. So my brain goes through and counts the number of bytes involved in adding a section to an L file. But some people would just need to be able to see like a du-sk diff and go, okay, that seems okay. That kind of thing.
But I think also it's very easy to get overly focused on a specific aspect of the entire system and then come up like, in this group, we're coming up with designs and we come up with a design that looks okay in isolation. And then it's only later on when you actually try and apply it to a real problem, you find, oh no, it's incredibly flawed. And so the like IETF approach of rough consensus and running code, like we should have something that roughly works and does a thing that people want it to work. And then we can work out how the design should be, how to support that use case, rather than coming up with a design in a vacuum and then hoping that the use cases that people actually want are supported by it.
Yeah, I think you end up with, oh, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
So this is actually goes back to the in toto discussion. So why don't we continue with this discussion and then come back to in toto and also witness.
Okay.
So Jeremy, are you done with your thoughts, or do you think?
I just want to raise the point. I don't think we're going to solve it right now. Obviously, no one's going to come up with a demonstration at this moment. I would love to. I mean, Ava, if you've written down the kinds of use cases you want to support, I would like to see references. And if you haven't written them down, please do.
I have not. I've been bouncing them around off several people in this past. I don't know if you were here at the very beginning. I mentioned I was on the road for the past 2 weeks. A chunk of that was for B-Sides and RSA and a couple other conferences, and testing my ideas against CISOs, and asking, does this solve the problems you face right now? And which of these paths is most essential? And what I articulated is what I got back, giving additional signal to defending teams that helps them focus their limited resources. We're not going to, solve everything, but if we can give them that signal, it'll help them right now.
So Ed, do you know Jerry Gamblin from Kenna?
Not Jerry. I know other people from Kenna.
Okay, it might be worthwhile to maybe invite some of the Kenna people here, because to Ava's point, a lot of what Kenna does is helping with prioritization. And if we can talk to the Kenna folks and get their sense of how outputs from GitBOM would integrate into what Kenna's offerings, what Kenna offers, that might be a very interesting, very practical discussion. And Ava, does that make sense to you? And Jeremy, does that start moving us towards the practicality side of things, in your opinion?
I don't know the item you're referencing, though.
Ed, can you hum a few bars about Kenna?
I can hum a very few bars about Kenna. They basically have all kinds of magic to try and help you prioritize the infinite list of CVEs that is now descending upon your head. And sort of go, okay, this one you really have to fix them. This is the priority order of what you need to fix, so that you don't sort of randomly pick out of a hat and put a huge amount of effort in something that doesn't move the needle.
The other company that comes to my mind is WhiteSource, because they have some correlation between source code and CVEs today. I don't know the details of it, but I do think testing this with some companies is one path we could go. Another path would just be to chase when you do a proof of concept in the cloud native ecosystem, using some of the tools we already have in GitBOM, plus in toto as a build step, publish them, stick it on, kludge it however it needs to be kludged, so that something like Witness or OPA can evaluate it as a container comes in. I suspect between Frederick and Santiago and a couple of us on the call today, we could potentially have a POC of that in a few months. In time for one of the, KubeCon in the fall or something like that.
Demos are good. We like demos.
Demo-driven development or conference-driven development.
Conference-driven development. It's definitely a thing.
But you don't have to ship it at the conference. It's an important distinction I've found for conference-driven
Absolutely.
development.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a whole lot more that goes into shipping than just being able to show a thing working. Working is only the first step. Cool. No, but I think that's actually kind of a good idea. I tend to see the world in terms of a bunch of tight loops of sort of hashing things out, implementing, discovering what is grumpy about the process, hashing things out, up to and including things like how I spend a lot of time thinking about things like how do things grep? Because inevitably, when you provide a fairly simple, easy format for people to muck with, someone is going to start hacking on it in shell scripts. So,
Jeremy, in the meantime, for that use case, having it written down, do you have a suggestion on where I could best stick that for visibility? Because my knee jerk is go right into Google Doc and then copy it into our website somewhere. But I hadn't thought beyond that yet.
I mean, I think of this as a working document for this audience rather than like something you necessarily want to publicize. Like you don't want to.
Then I'm happy to write it in a Google Doc and have it for our next spec call.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, even like as a sort of like additional material in the spec repo or something like that, like, here's some ideas of use cases that we want this to support.
Got it. Okay. Glad I asked to help clarify what your ask was.
Yeah.
Caveat, I will probably miss next week's call because of conference.
I think ultimately we would want to be able to turn it into something that we can put on the public webpage, but that's much further down the line in my mind.
Jeremy, it sounds like you have a murder of crows near you. Be careful.
I do have a murder of crows. They are demanding nuts to be put on the railing of our balcony.
So do we now have an avian expansion of the community?
I think we do.
I think they're also cross-eyed out cats who are standing at the door looking through the screen, wanting to murder some murders.
Cat TV, yes, I'm very familiar. So actually that brings up another interesting point that never occurs to me until sort of the time, which is I am also likely to be largely out of pocket next week due to conference. We can certainly proceed next week without Ava and I if folks would like, but I did want to be clear with that up front.
I think we might be okay skipping a week. And that'll give us time to get more input on the time of the meeting, and then we can make a decision what time the meeting should be 2 weeks from now.
Okay. If we are going to skip this next week, because I feel like we're accumulating more spec work than POC work right now, would anyone be okay with simply shifting, if we skip next week to the week after next being a spec meeting, and we'll just continue the cadence from there? Okay. Okay. One other quick thing, Andrew, you had dropped a note about reworking copy on website to better promote GitBOM. I would be super interested in your thoughts there, because we are forever looking for ways to improve the promotion of GitBOM, and more perspective seems to help tremendously in that discussion.
Yeah, so I will say doing stuff like that, like docs stuff and kind of educational stuff, is something I really enjoy. And for like looking at the GitBOM site, I think there's more that can be done to sort of, I don't know, kind of hide some of the complexity up front. I think right now it starts with kind of an explanation of some of the technical, like it allows tools to do this. And the why is kind of further down. I think reworking the why, moving that further up and making some other sort of structural edits to it would make it more digestible for people who are coming into it without much of an idea of, you know, like what it is, what it's for.
Yeah, so I would say as someone who did a lot of the current copy that I have anti-ego around it, meaning I cobbled together to the best of my ability and I'm acutely aware of its deficiencies. And anything that folks would like to contribute to restructure and help would be enormously appreciated. There is a GitBOM site repo. It's just a bunch of Hugo Markdown basically at the end of the day. So if you are inspired to go and push PRs, or you want to open about issues about how you'd like to restructure things, you want to talk about it before you push PRs, either one would make me overjoyed.
Awesome.
I have deep appreciation for the quality of good documentation, but relatively limited facility for it. So cool. So I think we actually talked through a whole lot of the things in the new conversation list last time. Are there things that folks would like to revisit this time, or do we want to just call the meeting, or are there other topics that folks would like to discuss?
I mean, I wouldn't mind almost 20 minutes back, unless there's anything someone has a desire to discuss.
Yeah, I'm disinclined to hold people past a useful set of time. So I was sort of wanting to make sure that there weren't other things folks wanted to discuss on this call. Otherwise, I am inclined to yield back time.
At some point, and not today, I would like to talk through the alloy spec stuff. I need to remind myself what I actually wrote in there, but I suspect that will be a very, very deep dive conversation. And I'm curious to know, what stomach people have for that.
I would be quite interested in that. I specifically didn't call you out because it's not nice to call people out on deep conversations without warning. But yeah, I would be quite interested there. I actually got to the point of trying to poke a little bit at it myself, to sort of get a sense of things. I think that's where you and I had a discussion about whether or not you consider yourself to have two kinds of records in the GitBOM file, or whether it's just the way you represent a null field value. But I have a natural bias against branches that comes from being too close to CPUs for too long.
Right. So I think, what I'm interested in that discussion is I put together my sort of mental model of the fundamental, like the really fundamental notions of the GitBOM design as it currently stands. And I would like to see if there's consensus, like whether or not I actually, the way that I'm presenting it is actually lines up with other people's mental models, and if not, how to bring them into alignment, and if so, discuss the implications of that. We could easily, it seems to be a deep enough conversation, we could easily spend an entire hour on it or more. So it's almost like, should we have a separate, just one-off meeting for that, for those who are interested, rather than monopolize one of these sessions? Or
I would certainly be interested in that if we were to decide to pursue it that way. But as I said, I trend towards the extraordinarily abstract. So more so than most humans.
Yeah, this is certainly at the abstract end of things. Anyway, we can talk about it on the Slack.
Okay.
I'm I don't want to dive into it now. So I'm happy to finish 15 minutes early.
All right, excellent. So it's been a pleasure. And I will see all of you not next week, the week after next.
Thank you,
Sound good?
everyone. Have a good day.
Talk to you later.